When you're occupying prime real estate in an avoidance mind, the most telling sign is their inability to stop bringing you up in conversations, even when it's completely unnecessary or inappropriate to the discussion. They become psychologically incapable of filtering you out of their daily narrative because you've become so integrated into their thought processes that every experience gets connected back to you somehow. This isn't conscious behavior, it's their subconscious mind's way of keeping you alive and present in their daily reality. The avoidant finds themselves referencing how you would handle situations they're facing, mentioning things you once said that relate to current conversations, or comparing new experiences to memories they shared with you. They tell friends, family, co-workers, and even new romantic interests stories that somehow involve you, always framing these references as casual observations rather than evidence of ongoing preoccupation. The frequency of these mentions becomes so obvious that others begin to notice and comment on it. Friends might say things like, "You mention them a lot for someone you're supposedly over," or "Why do you always bring them up when we're talking about completely different things?" The avoidant usually becomes defensive when this pattern is pointed out, claiming they're just making conversation or providing context, but the reality is that you've become such a central part of their mental landscape that they can't separate new experiences from the relationship that fundamentally changed them. This compulsive mentioning serves multiple psychological functions for the avoidant. It keeps you present in their social circles, maintains your relevance in their daily life, and provides a socially acceptable way to talk about you without admitting they're still emotionally invested. They're essentially keeping you alive in their conversations because they can't bear to let you fade completely from their existence. The most revealing aspect of this behavior is that it often includes positive references, fond memories, and complimentary comparisons. The avoidant doesn't just mention you when they're complaining or processing negative emotions. They bring you up when they're happy, when they're problem solving, when they're reminiscing. This suggests that you're not just occupying space in their mind as unresolved trauma, but as an integrated part of their identity and worldview. They become obsessed with your social media activity without ever engaging. The second unmistakable sign that you're living rent-free in the avoidance mind is their transformation into a professional social media detective who knows every detail of your online presence while maintaining complete radio silence. They study your posts with the dedication of someone conducting academic research, analyzing every photo, caption, story, and update for clues about your emotional state, your activities, and whether you might be thinking about them. This digital stalking goes far beyond casual curiosity. It's compulsive monitoring that borders on addiction. The avoidant checks your profiles multiple times daily, screenshots posts they want to study more carefully, and creates detailed mental timelines of your activities. They know your posting schedule better than their own, recognize patterns in your content, and can detect subtle changes in your mood based on your online behavior. The avoidant memorizes details that serve no practical purpose unless you're occupying enormous space in their thoughts. They know which friends you're spending time with, what restaurants you're visiting, what books you're reading, what music you're listening to, and how your professional life is progressing. They maintain encyclopedic knowledge of your life while pretending to have moved on completely. What makes this behavior particularly telling is their restraint from engaging with your content. They never like your posts, never comment on your updates, never react to your stories, but they consume every piece of content you create with obsessive attention. This self-imposed ban on interaction reveals their internal conflict between wanting to stay connected and needing to maintain their emotional defenses. The avoidant often uses this information to gauge whether you might be open to reconciliation, whether you seem happy without them, whether you're dating someone new, and whether you ever post anything that might be a subtle reference to your past relationship. They're looking for signs that you still think about them while being too afraid to create any signs that they're thinking about you. This pattern can continue for months or even years after the relationship ends, proving that you haven't just taken up temporary residence in their mind. You've established permanent occupancy that they're either unwilling or unable to evict. They compare every new person to you and find everyone lacking. The third sign that you're living rent-free in the avoidance mind is their complete inability to form meaningful connections with anyone new, because everyone gets measured against the standard you've set and found inadequate. This isn't just casual comparison, it's systematic evaluation where you serve as the gold standard that no one else can meet. The avoidant might date other people, even enter new relationships, but they unconsciously sabotage every potential connection by holding their new partners to impossible standards based on your unique combination of qualities. This new person is more attractive, but doesn't have your sense of humor. That person is more emotionally available, but lacks your intelligence. Someone else is more independent, but doesn't understand them the way you did. This comparative process reveals that you've become the template for what the avoidant considers ideal partnership. Even if they couldn't appreciate or reciprocate that ideal when they had it, they're essentially using you as a measuring stick for everyone else, which proves you're not just occupying space in their mind, you're serving as the central reference point for their understanding of love and compatibility. The cruel irony is that the avoidant often finds fault with new partners for not being enough like you, while simultaneously dating them because they're trying to prove to themselves that they can love someone else. They want to replace you, but can't stop using you as the standard for replacement, creating an impossible situation where no one else can ever measure up to your memory. This pattern extends beyond romantic relationships to friendships and professional connections as well. The avoidant finds themselves wishing other people had your emotional intelligence, your way of handling conflict, your particular combination of strength and gentleness. You've become the benchmark for human connection in their mind, making everyone else feel like a pale imitation of what they once had. The fact that you continue to serve as their standard for comparison months or years after the relationship ended proves that you're not just a memory they occasionally revisit, you're a living presence in their decision-making process that influences how they evaluate every new person who enters their life. They make life decisions based on what you would think or how you would react. The fourth, and perhaps most profound sign that you're living rent-free in the avoidant's mind is their unconscious habit of filtering major life decisions through the lens of your perspective, even when you're no longer part of their life. They find themselves wondering what you would think about their career choices, how you would react to their new living situation, whether you would approve of their personal growth efforts, or if you would be proud of their accomplishments. This internalized version of you has become a moral compass and decision-making consultant that they carry with them everywhere. When facing important choices, they automatically consider how you would advise them, what concerns you might raise, what questions you would ask. They've integrated your wisdom, your values, and your way of thinking so completely into their own thought processes that you continue to influence their life even in your absence. The avoidant might choose to pursue goals you encourage them to follow, avoid behaviors you once expressed concern about, or make changes you suggested during the relationship. They're essentially living their life in ongoing dialogue with your memory, constantly considering how their choices would appear to someone who truly knew and understood them. This phenomenon goes beyond simple nostalgia or occasional wondering about your opinion. It's systematic consultation with an internalized version of you that has become part of their decision-making apparatus. They've appointed you as a permanent member of their internal advisory board, giving you veto power over their choices, even when you're no longer available to exercise it. Sometimes this manifests as the avoidant making positive changes they think would impress you, pursuing education, improving their health, developing better communication skills, or addressing personal issues you once identified. Other times, it appears as avoiding choices they think would disappoint you, or maintaining standards they believe you would expect them to uphold. The most telling aspect of this pattern is that it often leads to growth and positive change in the avoidant's life, suggesting that your influence was profoundly beneficial and that they recognize this fact. They're essentially trying to become worthy of the love they couldn't appreciate when they had it, using your internalized voice as motivation for personal development, the deeper psychological reality of rent-free occupancy. When someone lives rent-free in an avoidant's mind, it's not just about unresolved feelings or inability to move on, it's about fundamental identity integration. You haven't just left an impression on their life, you've become woven into the fabric of who they are and how they understand themselves in relation to others. This mental occupancy is particularly significant for avoidants because they typically work so hard to forget past relationships, to minimize their importance, and to move forward without looking back. When they can't evict you from their thoughts despite their best efforts, it's powerful evidence that you represented something transformational in their emotional development. The tragedy is that this mental occupancy often becomes most apparent after it's too late to act on it meaningfully. By the time the avoidant recognizes how completely you've integrated into their identity and decision-making processes, you've often moved on to healthier relationships where your value is recognized and reciprocated in real time, rather than just in retrospective appreciation.